What if I told you there are two South American countries where you can retire with quality of life on par with Europe, but for a fraction of the cost and with zero taxes on your social security pensions? But be warned, this is a continent that changes really fast. I am South American, and when I was a child, Venezuela was very wealthy, attracting immigrants from my country. Today, however, Venezuela has collapsed so badly that Venezuelans come to us as refugees. And the differences between South American countries are enormous too. Some countries have lower crime rates than the US, others are more violent than South Africa. Some leave your social security untouched, zero taxes, while others tax it up to 34%. So today I'm ranking every South American country from worst to best, based on four criteria: quality of life, safety, and in this factor you will get some surprises: cost of living, taxation of foreign income, and my personal impression as a South American that helped hundreds of expats. I've ranked all 10 countries and there are two clear winners. So let's count them down, starting with the worst one. 10th, Venezuela, a cautionary collapse. How does a country that was once the richest in South America end up being the worst destination? In the 1980s and 1990s, Venezuela was wealthy, powered by oil, and drew in migrants from across the continent. Its cities were developed, its economy was strong, and people saw it as a land of opportunity. For many, it looked like the place you might actually want to move to. In fact, waves of people from my country moved to there to make money. That image, however, belongs to the past. Today, Venezuela stands as a warning of what happens when prolonged political mismanagement meets economic collapse. Hyperinflation has destroyed the currency, food and medicine shortages are common, and bureaucracy makes visas nearly impossible to navigate. You cannot rely on shelves being stocked, and even when you hold foreign currency, your purchasing power is limited by scarcity. The crisis extends into safety. Many crimes go unreported, and violence has become so widespread that raw numbers understate the danger. Kidnappings, robberies, and assaults are common in both cities and rural areas. It's one of the most dangerous places in the world, and no amount of affordability offsets the constant risk. This is what a local from Venezuela told us about life there. Open quote. Currently, the power goes out for 3 hours every 3 hours, and we are expecting a blackout. There is no healthcare system, no doctors or nurses, no sanitary control of anything. End quote. With weak services, scarce goods, widespread insecurity, and high taxation, Venezuela scores lowest in every factor. Venezuela gets a 1 in quality of life, a 1 in safety, and a 4 in cost of living. With a total score of 6, it's by far the lowest and the worst in our ranking. Maybe soon I will rank the best and worst in Europe too. Let me know in the comment section if you would like a video on such controversial topic. Now imagine a country that is safe and affordable, yet let down by its infrastructure. That is exactly where we go next. 9. Ecuador. Affordable, but dangerous. What happens when a country with excellent retiree visas becomes one of the most dangerous on the continent? That is the story of Ecuador, a nation that still offers some good features on paper. The retiree visa, called jubilado, requires proof of $1,410 per month in guaranteed income. The process is straightforward, grants 2 years of temporary residence, and leads to permanent status if conditions are met. The cost of living is also appealing. According to data from Numbeo.com, the cost of living index of Ecuador is just 29.26. This is an index that considers New York as base 100. For comparison, Mexico has an index of 37.64. Housing, for example, is remarkably cheap when compared to the rest of Latin America. Quito has some of the lowest real estate prices among South American capitals. This gives Ecuador a cost of living score of 7 out of 10. Ecuador's Human Development Index stands at about 0.777, placing it in the middle range. Infrastructure lacks in some aspects, including air connectivity. The biggest airport of Ecuador is only the number 22 in South America. For overall quality of life, Ecuador earns a score of 4 out of 10. But things get much worse once safety enters the equation. Ecuador's homicide rate rose from 25 per 100,000 to 45 in just 1 year. That makes it the most violent country in South America today. We asked a local about violence in Ecuador, and this is what he told us. Open quote, I have been to almost every Latin American country except Venezuela, and in my opinion, Ecuador is by far the worst now regarding security. Quito and Guayaquil seem horrendous regarding crime, but Cuenca is definitely a lot better. End quote. For safety, Ecuador scores just 2 out of 10. Adding all factors together, the final score is 13. Ecuador looks good from the financial side, it is cheap, yet crime pushes it much lower in this ranking. The next country shows a very different balance between affordability and development. And talking about affordability and rankings, if you enjoy our data-based, research-driven videos that we put a lot of work to do, I would be glad if you could click on the like and subscribe button. It would be such a great help for us. 8. Bolivia. Bolivia ranks higher than Venezuela and Ecuador because it's both inexpensive and relatively safe. The cost of living index there is a meager 25.5, even lower and therefore cheaper than Ecuador. This low cost of living goes from housing to more ordinary stuff like groceries. For this reason, they get a score 7 in cost of living. On safety, Bolivia posts a homicide rate of just 3 per 100,000 residents per year, one of the lowest in entire Latin America. There are, however, some issues on how Bolivia calculates their homicide rate, so take this number with a pinch of salt. Bolivia gets a score of 6 in safety. Yet, quality of life indicators remain a serious drawback. With a Human Development Index of 0.733, Bolivia is second to last in South America, only Venezuela is worse. This reflects limited healthcare, lower average income, and weaker infrastructure than retirees might expect. Outside of La Paz and Santa Cruz, medical care is difficult to access, and even in major cities, it's not comparable with higher-ranked countries. Road networks, airports, and utilities also lag, which reduces comfort for long-term living. On this measure, Bolivia earns just 2 out of 10. The economy leans heavily on natural gas exports, which make up roughly 40% of revenue. The current low prices for gas pose long-term risks of instability. This mix of affordability and insecurity brings Bolivia to a total of 15 points. Now time to talk about the big neighbor of Bolivia. But before, I have really good news. My Expat Wealth and Lifestyle Compass, valued at $180, is yours free for a limited time. Receive our 74-page analysis of affordable cities in Spain, Italy, and France, our guide for zero income tax countries that can save you up to $15,600, and the checklist that prevents costly mistakes. Don't let your chances go away. Scan this QR code now and join us for free. 7. Brazil. Brazil offers a lot of good things. No, I'm not talking to you, passport bros. But at what price? On paper, it appears attractive. The country has a Human Development Index of 0.786, but southern regions have a way higher HDI than the rest of the country. Larger cities like São Paulo have an impressive infrastructure of hospitals, international airports, and cultural institutions. For many expats, the lifestyle is modern and varied, but the high and sometimes chaotic urbanization charges a price in terms of traffic, pollution, noise, and general chaos. Yes, chaos. I lived in São Paulo for some time, and I think chaotic is a good adjective to describe the city, especially when it rains. On this front, Brazil earns a 6 out of 10 for quality of life. But things get worse when you talk about crime. Safety is where Brazil struggles heavily. The homicide rate is 21.1 per 100,000 people in 2024, making it one of the most violent countries in entire Latin America. Beyond violent crime, expats must also contend with petty theft, scams, and general insecurity, especially in large metropolitan regions. For safety, Brazil scored a 3 out of 10. Living costs are another challenge. Brazil is not among the cheapest countries in South America. There is also a phenomenon in Brazil that is very difficult for me to explain to Europeans regarding housing prices. In cities like Rio de Janeiro or São Paulo, average housing prices can be misleading because they include properties in very unsafe areas near favelas, which makes the overall cost seem lower than it really is. But when you check the prices of the safer, more developed districts, they are way more expensive. In Europe, I rarely see such discrepancies. The most expensive district in São Paulo has a square meter price 14.5 times higher than the cheapest. In Madrid, Spain, the most expensive district is just 4 times more expensive than the cheapest. But at least fruits are very cheap in Brazil. I miss eating mangoes. So Brazil gets a 6 out of 10 for cost of living. Residency requirements are relatively high. To obtain the retirement visa, applicants must prove they receive at least $2,000 in monthly foreign income. Finally, U.S. Social Security is taxed as standard income in Brazil, with rates climbing to 27.5%, and there is no treaty for relief. Together, Brazil totals 15 points and a 7th place. The next country is very similar to Brazil. In fact, I would call it a Brazil that speaks Spanish, and it's a bit worse at football, but way more affordable. 6. Colombia. Colombia often surprises expats. It feels modern and affordable, but insecurity remains a constant factor. The country has a Human Development Index of 0.788, slightly higher than Brazil. In major cities like Bogota and Medellin, there are modern hospitals, improved roads, and urban transport systems, and healthcare has advanced significantly. Many expats highlight the quality of care available, especially in Medellin, which has become a popular expat destination. However, regional inequality and a weaker service in poorer areas lower the overall score. Since we need to consider the entire country and not just the most developed cities, for quality of life, Colombia earns 6 out of 10. On safety, the country still has serious challenges. The homicide rate is 25.4 per 100,000 residents, which is among the highest in South America. While this is a marked improvement from the worst years of violence, it remains troubling. Colombia scores 3 out of 10 in this factor. Living costs, by contrast, are one of Colombia's greatest advantages. The cost of living index is just 28, one of the lowest and cheapest in the region. Expats find rents low, fresh food affordable, and local services inexpensive. For cost of living, Colombia scores a 8 out of 10. The residency system works in favor of foreign retirees. The pensionado visa requires a monthly income of around $975, which is realistic for many receiving Social Security. However, taxation is heavy for those considered residents. Worldwide income may be taxed up to 39%. The final score for Colombia is 18. The low costs are a highlight, but violence does not allow the country to rank higher. But some places keep costs low, without the same level of danger. The next country in our ranking shows that balance. 50. Paraguay. Imagine being able to settle in South America while keeping your entire foreign pension tax-free. That is exactly what Paraguay offers, and it makes the country stand out even before we look at the other factors. Safety is one of Paraguay's biggest advantages. The homicide rate is about 7 per 100,000 people, far below many neighboring countries, and almost the entire country there is no large-scale drug war, nor the level of urban violence many expats fear elsewhere. Life is often described as calm and routine. For this, Paraguay earns 7 out of 10 for safety. Affordability is another clear strength. With a cost of living index of just 22.82, Paraguay is the cheapest country of the southern cone. For cost of living, Paraguay gets a 9 out of 10. Quality of life, however, is not at the top level. The Human Development Index stands at 0.756, below many neighbors in the region. Healthcare is still developing, infrastructure is basic, and Asunción is much quieter than larger South American capitals. Expats in Paraguay trade some modern comforts for simplicity, and the quality of life factor lands at 3 out of 10. The residency process is perhaps the easiest on the continent. Applicants show proof of about $1,300 in recurring monthly income, along with basic documents like a background check. Approval comes in a few months, and residency does not expire, though you must visit once every 3 years to maintain it. Taxes are a final win. Paraguay's territorial model means foreign pensions remain untaxed, giving retirees full use of their income. Paraguay makes 19 points in total and gets the 50th place, right in the middle of the ranking. In my personal opinion, it's a country with a lot of potential, and in a few years, it will probably rank higher. They are investing heavily in infrastructure and attracting considerable investments. Next comes a country that balances affordability with stronger infrastructure. 4th place, Peru. Can a country find a balance between safety, affordability, and living standards? Peru comes close to that balance. With a Human Development Index of 0.794, it performs above regional averages, reflecting improvements in health and education over the past decades. In Lima or Arequipa, expats find private healthcare of reasonable quality, international flight connections, and modern amenities. Still, because rural areas remain underdeveloped, GAPS pull its overall score in quality of life to 7 out of 10. Safety is another mixed picture. Peru's homicide rate stands at 6 per 100,000, which is much better than Brazil or Colombia, but is still not close to the best. But a curiosity, since the US has a rate of 6.8 per 100,000 residents, Peru, in this indicator, is better than the United States. Still, pickpocketing and theft occur frequently in crowded bus terminals and local markets. For an expat lifestyle centered around Lima, Arequipa, or Cusco, risks are more about petty crime than serious violence. On safety, Peru scores a 6 out of 10. The residency program works in favor of expat retirees and pensioners. The rentista visa requires a minimum income of about $1,000 per month for the main applicant, with an additional $500 if applying with a spouse. The paperwork is predictable, and approval usually takes 1 to 3 months. While holders must spend half the year in Peru, the path to permanent residence is clear after 3 years. Finally, Peru's cost of living index is about 29.97. A couple can live comfortably from 1,500 to 2,000 even in major cities. Food, housing, transport, and services remain affordable, earning Peru 7 out of 10. Altogether, Peru reached 19 points, making it one of the most balanced retirement destinations. From here onward, we enter the premium tier of South America. Third, Uruguay, a very good place, but with a price tag. Living in Uruguay feels like living in a European country planted in South America, but it comes at a cost. The country is known for political stability, dependable services, and one of the safest environments on the continent. Montevideo, its capital, has good urban infrastructure, and it's attractive for expats who want security and predictability. Safety is good, not perfect, but good, with a homicide rate lower than most of the region, so Uruguay gets an 8 out of 10 on safety. The cost of this stability is significant. Uruguay's cost of living index sits at 51.34, the highest in South America and higher than some Western European countries like Spain or Portugal. Day-to-day expenses like groceries and utilities are expensive. One thing that is curiously expensive in Uruguay are cars. In Brazil or Argentina, cars are already far more expensive than in the US, but Uruguay have the highest prices of all. Maintaining a middle-class lifestyle requires a budget larger than most other South American options, so Uruguay scores a 2 out of 10 for cost of living. Quality of life, however, is where Uruguay excels. Its Human Development Index ranks among the highest in Latin America, reflecting strong education, healthcare access, and functioning institutions. For quality of life, Uruguay earns a 9 out of 10. Visa rules require more planning. The pensionado visa asks for a pension or passive income of $1,500 per month, plus a $100,000 investment in real estate or securities. This commitment must be held for 10 years, making it restrictive for retirees without substantial savings. Taxes are a bright spot. Foreign pensions are exempt. For 10 years, other sources of income, capital gains, can be tax exempt up for 10 years too. Altogether, Uruguay ends up with 19 points, a strong but expensive choice. You might have noticed that Paraguay, Peru, and Uruguay all got the same punctuation, 19 points. So the criteria used to decide the tie is quality of life, and among the three, Uruguay has the highest. But what if you want a place a bit cheaper, but with an even higher quality of life? That brings us to the next country, the second best in South America. Second, Chile. Once the best, but now just the second best. Chile has the highest Human Development Index in South America at 0.878. The gap Chile has to other South American countries in terms of HDI gets more evident when you look at the regional development levels in South America. All the 5 most developed regions in the continent are in Chile. I lived in Chile, and this was my neighborhood. Some people might get angry in the comment section, but I must say that this does not look like a typical Latin American city. It's too organized and clean. Expats living in Santiago or Valparaiso have access to modern hospitals, international schools, and public services that generally work as expected. That stability and the good infrastructure gives Chile 10 out of 10 for quality of life. The trade-off comes with a cost. Chile is one of the most expensive countries in Latin America with a cost of living index of 35.78. A couple in Santiago should budget between $2,500 to $4,000 per month, including rent, food, utilities, and transportation. A two-bedroom apartment in a good neighborhood can run from $1,000 to $2,000, and eating out or buying imported goods can feel like living in an American city. For affordability, Chile scores a 3 out of 10. However, outside Santiago, there are good cities like Villarrica and Concepcion that have a much lower cost of living. Safety is still above average for the region, with an homicide rate of 4.5 per 100,000 people. That is low by Latin American standards, but not as calm as it once was. Since 2019, violence increased there by 74%. When I lived in Chile more than a decade ago, it felt as safe as many parts of Europe. Today, locals tell me that while it remains secure compared to Colombia, it's no longer as tranquil, and petty crime has increased in big cities. For safety, Chile scores 8 out of 10. Visas to move to Chile involve some paperwork. The pensionado or rentista visa requires proof of stable retirement or passive income, usually around 5 times the minimum wage. Adding everything together, Chile reaches 21 points. It's a good choice for those ready to pay premium costs for better quality of life. But if I made this ranking 5 years ago, likely Chile would get the first place. Not anymore, and next comes the most surprising number 1. First, Argentina, the unexpected top pick. How does a country known for inflation and recurring economic problems rise to the number 1 spot for retirees? The answer lies in how Argentina looks when you measure all factors that matter for expats who live on foreign pensions. On human development, Argentina has one of the highest scores in the region with an HDI of 0.865. That reflects good healthcare, education levels, and a robust cultural life. Buenos Aires is often described as European in style, but it also can feel overwhelming. It's a vast metropolis with more than 30 million residents, constant traffic, and way more expensive than the rest of the country. Meanwhile, cities like Mendoza and Cordoba offer more relaxed and affordable living. I made a video of the best cities to live in Argentina, and these places are way cheaper than Buenos Aires. In the factor quality of life, Argentina reaches 9 out of 10. Safety is another standout. Argentina is the safest country in South America by some measures. Petty theft is still an issue, especially in busy areas, but overall, expats consistently point to feeling secure. For safety, Argentina earns 9 out of 10. At first glance, talk of inflation seems discouraging, but in this aspect, things are getting much better there. Inflation rates dropped significantly since the beginning of 2024. Argentina got more expensive lately with the stabilization of the economy, but it's still far cheaper than Uruguay and a bit cheaper than Chile. Some friends even tell me that Argentina is cheaper than Brazil, and the cost of living factor, Argentina gets a 7. Residency paths are also practical. The rentista visa requires around $1,390 per month in guaranteed pension income, and the process leads quickly to permanent residence. Altogether, Argentina finishes with 25 points. It's not the richest, but it's the most balanced choice for retirees. Now you know that places like Peru, Uruguay, Chile, and Argentina are actually quite good. But which cities in these countries are the best? For you, I ranked the 34 best cities to live in South America, from north to south. To see the ranking and discover astonishing places, click on this video to your left. Enjoy my Patreon for all the sources, charts, and maps from our videos, plus a chat so I can answer your questions. Tired to include my top 3 ebooks on living and retiring abroad? Scan the QR code today.